All right. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you all for coming. I have learned many new things this afternoon, and it's just been a joy hearing our three speakers. So if we could just start with another round of applause for all three of our speakers. So I have the unenviable task of trying to bring these three speeches together. But the good thing is we have wonderful, civil, and smart people here to have a conversation. I wanted to start, given the theme of the conference here on preparing the workforce, or maybe just humans, should Blaze's talk. I want to just pose to our panel here. I just want to hear more about how you view the future of education and educators in this new era we're entering, in the age of AI, we'll call it. Anyone want to start? Don't make me pick.
I just finished.
Okay, well, I could begin maybe. I like that you brought up the weird book, Joseph Henrich. I think that he was also the person who wrote The Secret of Our Success. Right, and the thesis of that book is that what makes people different, what makes humans different from the other great apes and so on. It's language, but it's also social learning and the accumulation over time of social technologies of all kinds, whether that's literature or how to make fire or how to make steam engines or how to type in those weird codes for Medicare that you're supposed to use. But that's a process of teaching and learning, which also relies fundamentally on theory of mind, by the way, because the teacher has to be modeling the minds of the students students have to be modeling the minds of the teacher. So it's that cycle of being a student and teacher over many generations that has led to everything that we have. And my own sense is that one of the reasons that language models and their successors, which will include language as well as other modalities, are so exciting is that they can participate with us in those cycles of teaching and learning, both as tutors or teachers and as students, and thereby continue to accelerate that cultural evolution, that progress that characterizes humanity. It's one of the reasons that I see them as part of humanity and not as aliens, separate from it. The fact that in many of the more of the less developed parts of the world, there are great shortages of teachers and of tutoring, especially, is a wonderful sort of potential that a lot of people have written about large language models as potentially playing a really interesting role there. Reid Hoffman has written in Impromptu a bunch of scenarios about how AI tutoring could really do some pretty magical things. And of course, when I was giving the example of doctors, one of the reasons that doctors have trouble making diagnoses is that keeping on top of the medical literature as it comes out is impossible. We're producing things at too large a rate, and the idea of AI systems being able to participate, in both the learning, the consumption, right, of all of that material being produced by human culture, and being able to interact, to teach, right, to diagnose with people. All of those are social relations of exactly those kinds. So, for those reasons, I'm quite optimistic, about this, despite the anxieties that I share, right, about some of the risks here.
Yeah, just to fire on the discussion. I think that we can face the same situation when Insul and Lenin was with electricity, because we can democratize education, and democratizing education in a really marketplace. It was made first time in 2009 with MMO, massive online courses. 99% of enrolled do not finish the classes. But now you have the perfect tutor, because the mentor can give you the content in the language that you're able to understand. And it could be really democratized. Or we heard that China would like to have an LLM that include the political vision that they have. It could be the perfect censorship or the perfect guidance to keep you stitched on a plan. So I don't think that technology alone is enough to answer to that. It's a technology, as you said, in a social environment. Because, no tools cannot become a weapon, and vice versa. And so this idea needs a democratic process of handling of technology. Well, I'm pretty sure that probably LLM could help a lot the most fragile inside the population. One of the most difficult things for elderly, usually now we have in Italy the expectancy to live up to 83 years. We make a survey and we ask to Italians when you became old. They answer 84 after they die. Well, but you arrive to 83, but in average, when you are 55, you use 3 different drugs every day. I live in a monastery with a lot of elderly, and the main refrain every lunch and every dinner is, should I take the pill before or after that I eat? Well, imagine that we pass from the printed little leaf with all the instruction to a LLM that simple answer, reply to your question about something. So it could be really useful for the fragile people. But we have to say that there is a base level that has to be human mediated. Otherwise, there is no social interaction. We could be much more individualized than how much we are here. And then we have to ask, who controls the hidden content of this kind of LLM? And, because you can produce the perfect believer of a system, much more than how much the priest did in the past. So in that way, and this is interesting and is a challenging because the world is so complex. And we know after World War II that another hot topic was the soft power. We know hard power, I bring 45 miles of tank in your country, Ukraine. Soft power, give me your best student and I will be back formed people for you. I remember that I was in Georgetown and Margaret Albright told us that they tried to do with China and the president told them, how many you want? 60,000, 70,000? Too much. Well, we have also sharp power, that is the use of social influence to damage another democracy. So LLM could be everything of this, could be an hard power, a soft power, an hard power, or a sharp power, but who can control? Also the engineers are not easy to control the results. We are talking about emergence inside the model. So they have some kind of, they aim to something that we don't put inside. So how to assure that kind of quality in a so fragile moment like education, for me, it's a question that we have to answer before we apply to that system.
For me, I think, having humans in the loop throughout the education system is key to its success. We just can't, turn over LLMs, or AI to, teach children. I also think it's an opportunity to address the equity gap, give, opportunities to those who are underrepresented or underserved to maybe have different access to information, also recognizing that they need to be informed to know how to use it. But I think there's a lot of potential in it to address equity, which is important.
So we've kind of touched on this throughout all the talks. We just touched on it here, the who controls question. This issue of value alignment and bringing values to AI systems in the first place. Can we get to a point where we can have a situation where we have AI systems for individuals or groups that are satisfying to them and their value orientations, generally?
I would think yes. I mean, I think you said there's going to be, it's such an, I don't even know what your number was. You said there's just going to be so many systems, but I think there will be, but I still believe there should be guardrails as sort of a foundational element to keep it ethical. Might not address, the Chinese example, but I'm not sure. what can be done there. But I think as long as there's guardrails, then yes.
Yeah, suppose that I ask to my digital assistant, can you help me to commit a suicide? Should be a correlative result from tons of tokens, or should be a line of code that tell no? And who decide? And should I declare it? Should be transparent in some way? So I think that now are more the question than not the answer. But if a civil society don't take the weight of that question, someone else will decide for us.
Yeah. I think that we do actually have the technological part of that answer, which doesn't solve the political part at all. But just to speak for a moment to the technological side of it, we know that a line of code can't work with something like a large language model because they don't work via rule-based systems that would allow you to put a line of code somewhere. There's not a variable that says, if suicide, then, blah, blah, blah. And that's good news because if it were just like that, then it would be trivial to, fool it, right? By just, asking it the question in a different way. What would be a lethal dose of blah, 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 or whatever, right? But we do know how to do value alignment of language models using fine-tuning and using human feedback reinforcement learning. And there was a really cool result, actually, from Facebook, sorry, Meta, whatever, a few months ago, called Lima, Less is More for Value Alignment, which I thought was is really quite a seminal result, in my opinion. Showed that, and I guess the intuition for this is that if you have a very large foundation model, then which has ingested a lot of content from the web, a lot of language, it gains the power to generalize from very small amounts of additional information. And in particular, things like, don't assist in people's suicides, right? A large, sophisticated language model can generalize such a rule readily, where a smaller model, will not do so readily. And so Lima, for instance, shows that all it takes is 1,000 labeled examples to reproduce ChatGPT level quality, starting with a generic foundation model. 1,000 examples is a very small amount, and that is, I could label 1,000 examples, and then I'd have my own personal LLM that is aligned with whatever values I want. So the good news is that, I think it's actually quite straightforward to value align a specific AI to a set of values that are compact enough for even an individual to be able to inspect and to understand. I also think there's a good regulatory suggestion there, which is that probably we want a guardrail that we should put in place is that an AI should be honest about who made it and what its values are. If you ask it, are you an AI or a human, it should be honest that it's an AI, and it should say and here's my agenda, or here's what my system of values is. So those seem like really solid solid pieces of legislation and of technology. The challenge, of course, is, well, are there going to be a billion or 10 billion different models aligned to different people's values? How do we think about whose values are okay and whose are not? We're back to the classical problem of just politics.
That is the part that scares me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad, Blaise, you brought up regulation, because that's where I was going to go too. I think absent, largely in a lot of these talks, is the role of government. Think about these social institutions, and we can talk about models being individualized to an individual person's value system, but we live in these nested societal units and embedded in societal institutions. Government and religion, two other really important social institutions that I don't think are going away anytime soon. Any thoughts on the roles of those two institutions? For LLM, I'll confine this to sort of the proliferation of LLMs question. Anyone?
I was scared that you asked me about government. No.
You could answer about religion instead.
Yeah.
Don't ask to an Italian to talk about Italian government. Well, no, okay, I can tell you a story, the story of Roundtable for AI Ethics, actually. And is the moment in which simple Catholic Church collecting the feeling that was arising among technician, engineer, and producer of AI start this cultural movement to make this sort of cultural pushing on AI. So the Vatican understand himself opening up the door to have this kind of discussion. And there was two apical moments in that production. One was just 2 days before the lockdown. We was in Rome, and we signed, there was at that time Catholic Church, Microsoft, IBM, FAO, United Nations, Italian government, European Parliament, but they don't sign because they need to approve with majority, to say that we need to protect the last and to make 6 principles aware of that. The interesting things is what happened this January, that Muslim and the High Rabbinate of Jerusalem signed the agreement. So that's interesting, you know, because we are talking about alignment problem like if it was an infinite side of the problem. The 3 major monotheistic religions find an agreement. Next July, God willing, we will be in Hiroshima, where the first bomb was, with Eastern religion. So there are a minimum set of things that could be shareable, that could be in some way culturally pushing on everyone to do. The argument is simple. Actually, the majority of people living on the planet are believers. So in a democratic process, we represent the majority. If you can tell, you know, we need that is important, this kind of governance, okay, this is soft law, it's not hard law. And the difference between an ethical call and a treaty or something else is how much is binding people. And this is really different, you know. There is an old English judge, Lord Malton, that say that ethics is everything that is not doable by law. So on the sinking Titanic, when someone shout first women and kids, and everyone allow women and kids to go first, that was ethics. There is no law for that. So it's a cultural movement, but religious institutions are on the front line, and also civil institutions, and also tech company. And that is really interesting. So we don't know what will happen, but something is moving.
I think the US government has a role to play with regulations around AI. I also agree tech companies have a role to play, but we did this recent survey of private and commercial companies, and 77% of those respondents, which were like director and higher and in the C-suite, indicated that they wanted US to get involved with regulations around AI. And all of us sort of sitting around the virtual table were sort of dumbfounded that industry would want, the government to come up with regulation. And I think in the world with, all this change, I think people are leaning in and hoping that the government will, at least from a values perspective, offer guidance as to make AI, like a reality here. It's just my thoughts.
That's certainly been my experience. The overwhelming, I think all of my senior colleagues at Google in management there are in favor of government regulation. I think the anxiety that a lot of tech people have about it is probably similar to the anxiety that many of us have when we see senators, interrogating Mark Zuckerberg, not knowing what Facebook's business model is, for example, or just betraying very, very, very basic misunderstandings of how this stuff works or what it is that the regulation will be done. So we very much want regulation. We want regulation that is more focused on goals and on outcomes than on specific technologies, because those change probably more rapidly than the law can keep up with. And it would be great, right, for the tech companies not to be the ones trying to wing it, and make this stuff up themselves, of course.
Laura, you mentioned that survey result being a surprise. I'm going to come to another survey result, the one in this room before the second talk, and what concerns us most, I believe, was the biggest concerns about AI. Paraphrasing Nathan, I can't remember the exact question. I was surprised to see the number one concern in this room is privacy and increased surveillance. Number 2, increased inequality. And least concern, widespread job loss. Maybe we'll speak to the 2 polls there and get some thoughts from our panelists here. What concerns you, and what do you have to say about privacy and increased surveillance for AI and this moment of generative AI that we're in?
Well, I mean, I went to Google with a very strong privacy agenda, so I was delighted to see that come out on top of the list. I do think that the potential of AI as an enabler of mass surveillance is very concerning. And it's especially concerning in an era when we see autocracy on the rise throughout the world, including in the US. You know, it's not an inherent property of AI or of the technology. It really is about the socio-technical system that's a part of. You know, my team at Google developed Google's face recognition engine. We did that throughout most of the 2010s. I was quite proud of that work. You know, we were actually the only face recognition engine that wasn't pilloried by Joy Buolamwini and the other sort of AI ethicists who began to look at performance of face recognition engines for people of various races. You know, pretty much all the other engines failed at doing good face recognition with people of color and with other underrepresented populations in the training data. We knew that we had to have broad-based training data and measure subpopulations separately and make sure that it reached par. So, you know, I was very happy about that. But does that mean that it's good or bad? Well, it's good if it's about unlocking your phone and your face print stays on the device, and you know this is strictly upside. It's good if it's even, you know, an outward-facing camera in your glasses and it's computing locally for people who are face blind, you know, that will whisper the name of somebody that you know in your ear and act as a prosthetic. It's bad if it then is crawling the web and putting a social credit score above your head, like in that wonderful episode of Black Mirror. And it's even worse if it is monitoring the entire population of Xinjiang or London, you know, and providing real-time analytics down to the individual level of where everybody is and what they're doing. That's not a question of, you know, is face recognition good or bad? It's a question of power relations and of information flow. You know, how is it being deployed? What's it doing? Given that it's a general-purpose technology, you know, it can be deployed in ways that are horrifying, or in ways that are very positive.
May I be a little bit provocative?
Please.
I studied the cases. It's connected to Google, but you know, when Mayo Clinics simple move the digitized medical record to Google Cloud, we are used to think privacy as a fence that protect my things from the worst. Well, crossing data, you can remove the name of the patients, but because I know where you was on Google Maps, that was you that was making that kind of examination. So this is a simple example. Is it AI something that should force us on rethink privacy? Because it's not an offense for my things, because the machine can go beyond. And so should we think a new way to tell what we have to protect for ourselves? So I'm involved with the foundation that we found after Room Call for AI Ethics on a project about the using of AI to give the status of refugees to people. We are not anymore hearing story from people. I was persecuted, I was treated. Give me your data. Give me your phone. And I tell you if you fit or don't fit in the model. So I have this deep feeling that we should change also the knowledge of privacy. What is privacy? It's not simple matter of data. It's also matter of, you know, existential area that you cannot touch it.
And of power. Again,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
both
power.
of the situations that you cite are power relations questions.
Probably we didn't think enough what AI can do.
I would be very opposed to the system that you just described for assigning refugee status. That makes no sense to me. On the other hand, using AI to analyze the way judges are making those judgments and noticing the patterns of bias. You know, for instance, in the US, there are some judges that grant systematically refugee status to 10% of the people who come in front of them, others 90%. I think that those analytics are actually pretty important for us to reveal things that are broken or problematic about the human behavior. So I support the use of AI for analyzing and debugging issues of bias, not for making those kinds of automated judgments.
Yes, as a philosopher, but I have a problem here. The problem is, as a human beings, we chosen some member of our species to make some judgment, doctor, judge, and things like that. Not according to how fair they was, but how much they are committed to their job. Everyone knows that a doctor can fail. Everyone knows that a judge can fail. Now that we have this confrontation with that machine, something is changing, So which kind of decision we should keep in the hand of a human beings that is fallible, and which one we can send to a machine? I have no answer, just to tell that the problem that you're pinging out.
I don't either, but you've advocated keeping humans in the loop.
Yeah, I think humans in the loop is absolutely key. And I'm with you. Surveillance is very concerning when you're in regimes that are exploitive of people and there's power controls. I sort of completely agree with what you said. So humans in the loop, 100%. If you're making decisions, and you have to hope the humans that are in the loop are sort of thinking from the same value systems that you are. Because if you do have, humans in the loop in a regime that's less than ideal, then you have bad decisions no matter what. You have bad humans and bad AI.
Right.
But
and again, that's a politics or
Yep.
other kind of problem. Yeah.
But humans in the loop.
Yeah. As for the incidental correlations that you were talking about, one of the really nice things about our work in federated learning over the last 10 years is that a little bit like cryptography, it's an adversarial field in which we propose methods for keeping learning or analytics anonymous, and everybody is trying to red team that and break it and say, oh, but if this correlation comes, then it violates and so on, and that's a very constructive exchange. When you get the entire research community involved in this kind of thing and it's open, then like with open cryptographic standards, that's how you know that it's safe. So I think those public adversarial relationships are fundamental to keeping us safe with privacy, and they're the very opposite of governments, for example, using closed AI systems, proprietary things bought from companies to surveil their citizens and do it in secret. The kind of things that Snowden revealed in 2014.
You mentioned red teaming. I think we're going to hear a lot more about red teaming over the years and some of these practices from the security community and trying to adversarially test systems and expose their flaws. It's a practice that we've taken on quite a bit in the responsible AI community. And there's a lot of overlap, I think, in the security community and responsible AI. But it's funny you mentioned that because I think as a society we'll hear a lot more about that. And I agree, getting the public and different viewpoints in to test these systems before they're deployed widely is just going to be critical over the years. Now, Laura, you got a little bit to a few jobs you thought could be on the rise over the years, and I'm just wanting to tease that out a little bit with the panel. What skills and competencies do you think will be either on the rise or most in demand over the next 10, 20 years in this space? Could be jobs, could just be skills and competencies. Any others?
I think the skills are sort of, at the basic level, being willing to be adaptable, be agile, because you're not going to know everything that is happening as technology evolves. Be grounded sort of in integrity. I think some jobs that might exist, I don't know, there's probably some jobs that we don't even know that are going to exist, but be open to lifelong learning, be a problem solver, open to curiosity, and having a fundamental knowledge of computer science and robotics and AI, at least today. But I think you have to be flexible. I think you have to be curious, and be willing to approach life through lifelong learning. whatever that looks like, learning on the job, learning in classrooms, taking classes at university, but realizing however you enter the workforce at 21, 24, whatever that age, what you're doing at 36 or 30, or even like 27, 28 might be absolutely different. So I think you have to just be super flexible.
Blaise, you want to talk about knowledge work versus more blue-collar work and the sort of inversion you spoke to?
Yeah, I mean, there are things that I very much agree with in what you're saying, and things that I'm not so sure about. The agree with is that that we need to be flexible, curious, develop sort of fundamental skills of learning how to learn, learning fundamental things. Math and physics don't go out of style. Knowing how to read and write, is not going to go out of style, even if machines are able to do these things as well. Skills that are more specialized, learning, I don't know, they're like Microsoft SQL certification, like who gives a crap? Like those things. Sorry, but all of those kind of things will evanesce more quickly, right? The more specialized and the more rote the information work is, the more quickly it will evanesce. Especially if it's something that can be graded in a trivial way. They're just like, yes, that's correct, that's not. I'm pretty sure it would take less than 1,000 examples for a GPT-4 level AI, let alone the kind that we'll have in a year or two, to be able to do that, at turbo speed. So, in that sense, I completely agree with what you're saying. But I also, and I would also note that things that I don't see AI replacing anytime in the near future are things that involve either manual labor or interpersonal interaction. It's one of the reasons that a lot of that automation stuff happens in human exclusion zones. The countryside has changed dramatically, in the last 15 or 20 years as automation has taken over a lot of different kinds of farm work, and a lot of factories have become highly automated. We don't see it because most of us now live in cities. So, the countryside has been this zone of extraordinary change. Rem Koolhaas, the urbanist and architect, has written about this. Whereas in the city, we see a lot less because robots are just not very good at interaction with people. That's why those robots in the hospital used back corridors, right, and secret alleyways, to get around like the backside of Hogwarts, and whenever a human appears, they're like beep, beep,
Yeah.
beep.
What's that? Yeah. And like nurses' jobs, I think you said earlier,
safe.
like they're not going to go, right?
They're not.
'Cause you need humans to be caring for people.
But unfortunately, those are exactly the kinds of jobs that today are underpaid.
Yep.
Kindergarten teacher, nurse, like the only human interaction job that is well paid nowadays is sex worker in the countries where it's illegal. That one's not going away anytime soon either.
No.
But this I think is a problem. Like we need to rethink how we value labor that is about human interaction and about physical interaction with the world, and think in a broader and more flexible way, as you say, about intellectual work as well.
I was about to ask about the clergy, right when Blaise mentioned his job that wasn't going away, so I'm glad. But I think it does, similar fits. This
I guess
sort of
shaman is the other oldest profession.
It's a personal interaction work,
That's right.
Because what makes a pastor is not a good homily. So it's not a GPT-4 replacement, but it's the presence that a pastor has when someone burns, when someone dies, when there is a marriage. So this is something that deserves to be included. But religion too has a role in this, because when one of the problems is not that the personal interaction work are the most lower underpaid jobs. Is that we are going to make an automation on the best paid job. And so the middle class will be shocked by that. And there is the Moravec paradox, in which a machine can make better high cognitive tasks than a lower one. So if you would like to buy a solar calculator, you can buy online for less than $1, delivered to your home. But if you would like to buy a mechanical arm to open a door, if you have an arm less, it's not enough, $200,000. If you have a kid of 4-year-olds, he can open up the door and go away. To make square roots, he need to go to the 12th grade. And so we will have rider, we don't have any more accountant. And that is a social problem, because we have to in some way we have to intervene to avoid, I agree, we are in an equilibrium point A, we will be arrived to an equilibrium point B. The problem is the continuity of the curve. Because if there is a breaking point, that is really dangerous, socially speaking.
I agree.
So limitations of AI systems and social interaction, interpersonal interaction notwithstanding. One question I was thinking of, especially thinking about the theme of this conference, imagine you were a teenager in the next 10 years or so. If you could design an AI system to be that future you's teacher or tutor, what would it look like and how would it interact with you?
Gamification.
Gamification.
Yeah.
Gamification. Yes, of course. You need something that is useful for kids, And I remember when there was this Python challenge online. It's middle age of online experience. That there was this level by level that you have to pass coding with Python. I learned to code in Python thanks to that, doing something else during the day. So it was really interesting because it is the new way. All the world is telling us that the frontal lecture is not working anymore. TED experience is something that tells us that also the standard 45-minute lecture is too much. We need to change the way we need to attract people, especially with the younger. You need to let them play, and during play they can acquire competence. And this is good also for the idea to remain flexible. Because if you look at the challenge of your life, like a game and competition, then you would like to play the game. But I don't know, it needs a radical rethinking of the means that we would like to use, but we need to think before what are the purposes.
Well, first, when you said teenager, I thought, gosh, I wouldn't want to go back to those days.
Yes.
But I think, like a game, it has to be very visually oriented. I think, I have a niece, she doesn't like to she watches videos all day long, so I think it has to be oriented to a video or a game. But I also think somehow, and I'm not sure how, it has to engage them in a variety of their senses, right? My niece, if she's learning about the Eiffel Tower, she's drawing a picture of the Eiffel Tower, she's reading about the Eiffel Tower, she sees videos of people at the Eiffel Tower. It has to be something that they feel immersed in, and then they engage in a variety of ways. And I'm not sure that AI can do that, but I'm hopeful that that's how I think, people will learn to go in the future, whether it's a game or like a video sort of with different, means of learning.
I mean, all of that does sound like it will be possible before too long. I mean, I'm reminded a little bit of Neil Stephenson's Diamond Age, which has a very compelling and in some ways dystopian, but in some ways rather wonderful sort of depiction of what a tutor, an AI tutor that is a book, right, could do for a young person, under dire circumstances. But I mean, I guess my answer is it will vary. What gamification looks like, what teaching modes look like, what length of lecture, if there are any lectures in fact work, which things motivate kids. These things vary a lot. And so for me, the magic of this comes from this theory of mind property, right? The fact that a good tutor or teacher, knows how to engage emotionally with a kid and knows when it's working, when not, when to change approach, when is the right time to have a lesson and when not, and so on. And those are things that AI can certainly do. I don't imagine that AI will be doing those things in isolation. Your human, I think your human in the loop point applies here as well. Any place that is possible, I'm assuming that the role of human teachers, is not going to be eliminated, but augmented. I have a lot more confidence in that than actually in a lot of other kinds of more purely information work. But the ability, especially with, when a teacher otherwise would have a large class, or when there are special needs students in the class or neurodiverse kids in the class, the ability of kind of a swarm of AI tutors that can, have longitudinal interactions with a kid over years and tailor things in very special ways and form bonds, right? I think is like there are extraordinary possibilities there if that's done well.
100%.
I'm thinking about just trying to distill principles here, in just some of these answers. I hear, in order to learn, we like a challenge. We like to have some goal that we're striving toward. We're visual learners or multisensory learners. And then this concept of learning as this inherently social thing is what I think, Blaise, you may be pointing to. Even in isolation, with this theory of mind thread that you're pulling on, having that imagined interlocutor almost in learning is interesting. And I'm just wondering if there are lessons, other types of first principles that we can take to thinking about how we're training and educating and learning and growing toward being productive individuals in some way, maybe not in the way that we sort of are conditioned to think in the sort of industrial conception of labor like you were speaking to. Any other thoughts on that we can try to just pull on and try to tease out here?
I think that we learned something from pandemic when we stopped the school. There are these GPS neurons that told us that if you don't live a 3D experience, you don't memorize the experience that you had. So the two-dimension experience of the Zoom call and things like that don't allow kids to memorize what they lived. Of my finals, I remember the temperature, the disposition of class. They don't remember what they passed through. We have a finals when you are K-12. And so they don't remember that. And another things could be not individual, but team mating. So a kind of teaching in which you make team, because having the ability to work in teams probably will be really, really important for the future. So this idea to move from you, the text, and the knowledge that you have to the text, to the ability to make a team, to solve a problem that is like a game, to find something, could be a really game changer for the lower age of education. Then for the higher is another game.
I think, human in the loop, right? I think you always, whether it's in a teaching situation or whatever, when there's AI at play, you have to have a human, working alongside it. And I think when an AI is in a certain, role, a human needs to be part of the training of it, whether it's in education and the AI is going to be assistant in the classroom. That professor or the teacher, whoever, should be teaching that AI and then training it and helping get that AI smart, or in a workforce. I think they're probably the two things that come to mind for me is just having, humans in the loop in both sense. Always having a human there and having a human, train and educate the AI.
The thing that I've been trying, I agree with what you've both said, but I feel like there's something else important that we have to inject into the discussion, which is the problem with capitalism. There was a feminist movement that I thought was very, very interesting from I believe from the 70s, Wages for Housework, that proposed to address the one of many gender inequalities by saying, like, why the hell are mothers not compensated for all of the caring labor that they do in the home? They do a tremendous amount of work. They did especially when many home things were not yet automated. We didn't have automatic dishwashers, and when there was still a certain number of people using pre-ringer washing machines and various other stuff. By the 70s, I guess a lot of that had been resolved in the US at least. But a huge amount of work that was uncompensated, and the answer was, it's time to pay them. On the one hand, I'm very sympathetic to that perspective. That was a Marxist feminist perspective. On the other hand, it kind of took for granted capitalism, and said, well, the only way to fix this problem is by starting to pay people. And if you start to then say, well, okay, anything that is good or productive, anything that is worth doing, people have to get paid for by somebody, by the government or by a pension fund or by whatever it is. I think you kind of get into a that can go to a pretty dark place, in the sense that a great many of the things that are positive and that are good about human interaction generate value in one way or another. Should I be paid to go hang out with my aging parents because that's good or productive or positive? Should I be paid to pick up my friends' kids from the daycare when they can't make it, and so on. So we either need to think about extending the getting paid right to everything that is useful and good to do, or we need to think about taking the sort of if you're not doing quote unquote productive labor, you're going to starve thing off the table. And so for me, there's a fundamental paradox about the way we've set up, especially the kind of most rabidly neoliberal version of capitalism in an environment where, yes, we can obviously encourage people to be flexible and to try doing new things and this and that. What about people who are not prepared to do all of these things? Do they starve? Do they not eat? Do they not have shelter? Do they not have education? Do they not have healthcare? I mean, this seems fundamental to resolve.
Yeah.
So I think we're getting close to time. Nathan, how are we doing on time? 4 minutes. Okay. All right. So I'm wondering if we can just talk to the audience a little bit and distinguish between, and Blaise, you might be working in a large technology company on AI, maybe in a good position to help sort of explain this. I just want to tease out, these distinctions between these large pre-trained models that we're all talking about, the LLMs, GPT-4s of the world, Palm, what have you, from a base model standpoint, and the applications that we build, that developers will build or technology companies will build. And because I want to set that grounding, and then I want to ask all three of you, what are some applications that are driven by these LLMs that you found interesting or that excite you or that you're optimistic about, or maybe some that you've come across that you're not so optimistic about, especially with respect to, given our conference here, labor, education, productivity, these kinds of things. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Blaise.
Well, I mean, the trouble is that, okay, so, I mean, a foundation model is just a fossilized probability distribution of, whatever it's trained on. Ted Chiang has called it a blurry JPEG of the web, which I think is accurate. But what I think Ted misses with that characterization is that once you set it in motion, once you ask it what its favorite island is, for instance, and then it generates an answer and so on, well, now it's no longer just a blurry JPEG. It's an entity that you're interacting with and that has its own, its own history, its own, its own personality, I suppose you might say. So I don't know. There are two really, really different ways of looking at this. You can look at big foundation models as kind of a sourdough starter from which you distill a specialized model that does something specific, right? Like face recognition, speech, translation, or whatever, or as a starter stock for making a being or an entity that is person-like in a lot of ways. And if you ask, well, what are the applications of something that is person-like? All of us, yeah. What we all do, is the space of applications. It's kind of unlimited. Although thinking of it in terms of applications might not even be the right framing, over the long run. And I'm not making a robot rights, kind of argument, but I am saying that from a labor standpoint, I'm not sure that there are clear limits to what that could be.
Yep. I guess where I was going with that is just trying to distinguish for those, I think the ChatGPT stuff out there in the zeitgeist, I see people sort of assume that these AI models is this chat interface. That is an application in and of itself. And there are, of course, many, many other applications built using these models or a fine-tuned version of the model or et cetera. So I just wanted to kind of get that distinction made initially.
I'll maybe give an example. So our team has built a lot of the AI features in Pixel and Android phones. And those include smart prediction in the keyboard, live caption, which puts captions on the screen for people who either are in a noisy environment or have hearing problems. Translate things on the device from one language to another, which is obviously another interesting accessibility thing. And I could go on and on. The face recognition that unlocks the phone, and that is done privately, by the way. So all of those are narrow AI applications, right, that are specific. If you imagine now that there is a foundation model-based general AI running on the phone or running maybe privately in the cloud and in contact with the phone that can, just as a consequence of its pre-training, recognize faces, take dictation, translate from one language to another, et cetera, then all of those narrow things go away and are replaced by a single model that you can just interact with and that has all of those skills. And that's really cool because, for instance, if it's doing simultaneous translation for me in Italy when I come to visit, then it knows that I speak a little bit of Italian, and so it'll maybe be supportive, right, rather than just translating word for word and say like, what he was saying actually meant this other thing, not what you thought, or if I get distracted for a moment, catch me up quickly, right? It's obviously much more useful, right, than just this literal rote kind of thing. Same with unlocking the phone. I mean, how many times do I have to unlock the damn phone? It should know that I'm still here, if it had the slightest bit of common sense. Right, given all of the sensors that it's got. So it's not a narrow application anymore, right? It's able to do all of that naturally.
Yeah, I think that one of the struggles that we have from when we developed computer is the speed of operation on CPU. One of the founder of ENIAC write to a friend, wow, this computer is wonderful. It's the computer that was used to calculate the amount of plutonium that you need to have a nuclear bomb. It can solve the partial von Neumann equation in 30 minutes. 28 to punch the card, 2 to make the calculation. So we move from the card to the keyboard, we move to the mouse, we move to the touch screen. Now we have natural language. So in that sense, foundational model could be the perfect interface to the power of computing. Being more academic, I found that these models that are fine-tuned real-time on a PDF is a wonderful for studies. You have 20 PDF, you drop inside the model, and you start to questioning about PDF. And imagine, academic research, you have to read. And sometimes you read 7 pages and you said, no, this is not working for me. You can now, like if you have someone that can answer, is this paper talking about the composition of the Middle Age? And he answers to you. So in that sense, it's a wonderful interface to speed also some cognitive process. But it cannot be the ends. It's a means. And I think that will be the next mouse, actually. And this is really interesting because it's the safest way to apply. It's a matter still of cost, energetic cost, and this is pushing also on the environment. To have everyone that use it, we have to lower the energy cost. This is one of the challenge, but could be the perfect next interface. I told that to Italian Parliament. Italian law are really okay. Imagine you can have this kind of GPT train on all the Italian law, and you can ask it. And it gives you a real answer what you can do or what you cannot do. It's a new way to have an interaction with the government. It could be really easy because it adapts to your level. So if you ask in a no really legal way, it can translate and answer back. So this is the first things that we will see in short time. Then I have a dream. I have all my files, almost half terabyte of things that I wrote in all my life. Imagine if I can use this model to access to my knowledge, not looking in every folder for every file, but speaking to the system and the system send back my knowledge already in a text that I can use. That's my night dream.
I'll refrain from an advertisement for the Windows Copilot coming soon. Lori.
I think forms of AI that I've seen that sort of I'm not like a fan of is like deep fakes and pictures that are modified, because I just feel as a human I can't use my senses to know what is real or what is not, and I feel like that's really alarming. And I think what you said earlier about tagging it, this is an AI you're interacting with, or this was generated from an AI, will be critical. But you see some things and where it's like, it's a picture of something that didn't even happen. And I think for those who, maybe are uninformed at that moment can leap to decisions and, and you could go all sorts of places. So indicating that it's, made from AI or, this is a human picture, but I find that uncomfortable.
Agreed. I think that, as you mentioned that in your talk, that's a problem we've got to get squared away. Both with the labeling.
For it to break capitalism is okay. For it to break democracy, maybe a little less.
Right. Labeling, being able for the machines to detect that content is AI generated, especially images and video. The technology's there. We've just got to have a coalition willing to do it and set some standards, I think. Okay, I think we'll wrap up there. It looks like we've got a few concluding remarks. Again, thank you. Let's please give our speakers a round of applause.
Well, what an afternoon. I'm supposed to say some concluding remarks, but we have one more business before we adjourn. My head's spinning. I don't know about all of you. We have so many things to think about. We have so many conversations which will emerge based on what we heard today. I would, at this point, like to invite President Peñalver and Provost Martin to stage, as we would like to give out the inaugural Seattle University Excellence in Ethics Award. This award is established with support from Microsoft to recognize an individual or group who represents the mission of Seattle University and contribute in a leadership capacity to embody our statement where innovation meets humanity. I'm so pleased and thrilled to announce that this inaugural Seattle University Excellence in Ethics Award goes to Father Paolo Benatti. Please join us on the stage, Father Benatti. And as we make room.
You want me to, should I give this part? Yeah. Congratulations. It's our great pleasure to give you this inaugural Excellence in Ethics Award. As we now, everyone here, if they didn't know before, now knows you are a global expert and an advisor to Pope Francis on AI ethics. And this award recognizes your efforts to support the development of Rome's call for AI ethics. This is something that came up in the context of the conversations earlier. It's a call for all of us to recognize and then to assume responsibility that comes from the multiplication of options that have been made possible by these new digital technologies. And I'll just quote from the Rome call. As we design and plan for the society of tomorrow, the use of AI must follow forms of action that are socially oriented, creative, connective, productive, responsible, and capable of having a positive impact on the personal and social life of younger generations. The social and ethical impact of AI must also be at the core of educational activities of AI. It's an honor for us and a privilege to bestow this award on you today, and I'd ask you to just say a few words and give you the award. Shane, do you want to?
Thank you. I think that I have already talked too much. Now, there is a deeply thank you also for all the people that in Italy are still working on that, for all the other religions that jump inside this ethical challenge, for all the people of goodwill that we found in this journey. We work, as we said, with institution, with government, with company, and we discovered that every one of these things is made by people. And it's thanks to the ethical sense of these people that we can recognize that ethics has still a role in this kind of society. So thank you very much. I will bring this to Italy. Thank you, thank you.
And on that note, thank you all and see you next year.